For today's art lesson, you are going to need a marker, a pencil, and something to color with. You are going to be doing a lot of tracing, so you want to make sure that you have a pencil so that the graphite can transfer. For the trick that we're going to do, you need to make sure you have a pencil. I want all of my pieces of my art to be the same today, so I'm going to tear a piece out of my sketchbook so that I can fold and trace. Any paper that is a computer paper will work. I am going to take the bottom of my paper and fold it up to the top and crease it in the center. Creasing it, so really pressing down on that fold to make it a nice sharp edge, is going to be important in this piece. Also, lining up those corners is going to be important. Now I'm going to take my paper and fold it in half from left to right. If I were to open my paper up again, I would have 4 equal sections. The last thing I'm going to do is take my folded edges, so my 2 short edges, keep them together, and fold it over to line up with that center fold. And then I'm going to crease that. This fold gets a little bit hard because it's so thick, but try to get those pages lined up and those edges lined up. Then when I open up my paper, I'm going to end up with basically a plus sign and an X in my creases. We are going to create a snowflake. So I want all of the lines of my snowflake to be the same length. So starting on that center line, I'm going to make a dot as far out to the edge as I can. Now I'm going to fold my paper in half, and then on top of the dot that I can see through my paper, I'm going to color on it, and that's going to push that pencil mark down onto that spot so that they are symmetrical. Now I'm folding that down to the line that is totally vertical, and I'm going to color on that spot on the back of it, and that transfers that onto that next line. Now I'm going to fold it from top to bottom, and that's going to transfer it up to the top. So now I have all these dots that are the same distance from the center. Now this is where it gets a little bit funky. I'm going to fold that top dot down to the far, bottom left line. You're not going to lay it flat. It's not going to have a flat crease like the others did. I'm just lining up that line with the crease. I'm lining up those creases and then coloring that dot. This is the funkiest fold you'll have to do. So there I can see my dot again. Now I'm going to fold my paper in half again from left to right, make that mark on the back to transfer it over, color on top of it, and then fold it from top to bottom one more time. Again, this is creating dots all the way around that are equal distance from the center of my snowflake fold. Now I want to connect my dots. I'm going to connect my dots on the fold. So I'm going to be creating an X, and I'm going to be creating a plus sign. The little V's that are created once I do this are going to be the sections that are then going to be symmetrical all the way around my piece. Now you need to pick one of those pieces, so one of those V's, and you are going to create the shapes inside that will then become your snowflake. So I'm going to draw even symmetrically inside my piece. I actually drew a really faint line. For mine, I wanted it to be the same on both sides, even in that V. Yours does not have to be. But so what I did on one side, I did on the other, and I drew some lines and shapes until I filled that space in. Once that little triangle there is done, we're going to use the same trick we used earlier where we can transfer our pencil lines. So I'm going to take my paper and I'm just going to fold it so that what I just drew is now laying face down on the neighboring V. And then I'm going to trace the lines that I can see through my paper. Go ahead and push pretty hard. That will help get those lines to show up on the other side. And if you make a mistake and get off of a line, you don't need to erase on the back of this at all. We are doing this in pencil for two reasons. One, so that it will transfer because the graphite from the pencil will push onto the next page. And then also because we can erase. So when I open up my piece, if it isn't perfect or if my lines don't perfectly match up, I can make them match up. I don't have to stay with what was actually traced. We want this as symmetrical as we can, but it's not going to be perfect. So now you can see those faint lines that are there from me pushing through my paper with my pencil. So now I'm going to trace over those lines so that there's graphite on those. So that way when I flip it again, I can trace those onto the next section. Now I'm going to fold my paper again. This time I'm going to trace two sections at a time. So I'm going to trace on the back of the piece that I just did, and then I'm going to go and trace over the back of the piece that I did first also. So I'm going to be tracing over those lines again. Because they are already drawn on the back, I have to remember what lines I have traced and what I haven't. So you can check back and forth and just look at it, open it up and look and see if you drew a line or not, and then you can always close it back up and retrace again. Once I open it up, now I see my two faint pieces that I need to trace over again with my pencil. So I'll trace over those so that when I do this one more fold, I can trace all four pieces and I will have my whole snowflake finished. Now you have a choice to make. I didn't want my art on my paper that I had folded up, so I put it back in my sketchbook underneath a blank paper and I traced it onto a new sheet. If you don't want to trace it onto a new sheet in your sketchbook, then you can just move on to this next step by outlining and doing it right on the paper that we just worked on. I'm not even going to work with pencil right now. I'm just going to go straight to that marker to trace. Now I'm going to start coloring in my picture. As you're coloring, you want to think about your colors being symmetrical too. So what you do in one piece of that pie or one slice, you're going to color the same in all of your pieces. So I'm starting in the center with those triangles, and each triangle gets colored in the same in each of those slices in my picture. You can choose whatever colors you would like to. You can use markers, crayons, or colored pencils. Once you have finished your picture and everything is colored in, make sure and take a picture of that and upload it to Artsonia so that your art teacher can see it. If you have any questions about any of these steps, please reach out to your art teacher through email.